Sometimes I forgot that I wasn't supposed to belong to this world. 2 years ago, I'd been a science student worrying about exams, coffee deadlines, and whether my laptop charger would survive another week. Then, reality folded in on itself in a way no physics textbook had ever prepared me for. And I woke up on a foreign shore beneath a sky that felt too wide, too blue, too real. Now I was 23, standing on the wooden deck of pirate flagship, wind in my hair, salt on my skin, and a reputation sharp enough to make nobles whisper my name like a curse. The Picachu Islands rose behind me, jagged, lively, lawless. They weren't just islands, they were a floating contradiction. Half mafia heaven, half engineering miracle. Ships docked at impossible angles thanks to clever pulley systems I designed myself. Windmills spun to power lantern networks. Cannon mounts hid beneath flower-painted panels. From above, it looked like charming. From below, it was deadly. I leaned against the rail, watching crew members scurry about, laughing, shouting, arguing. Pirates, yes, but pirates with rules, with community, with an unspoken loyalty that felt closer to family than anything I'd known back home. Daydreaming again, a gravelly voice said. I smiled without turning, thinking, big difference. Captain Hale Rowan stepped beside me. No relation to the king, a fact that never stopped the irony from being funny. His beard was streaked with silver, his coat worn but meticulously cared for. He'd taken me in when I washed ashore, confused, terrified, clutching a notebook full of half-finished equations. He'd trained me, protected me, given me something like purpose. To me, he was more than a captain, a master, a father, a stubborn old man who pretended not to worry and failed miserably. You've been pacing since dawn, Hale said. What's gnawing at the brilliant brain? I hesitated, then sighed. News from Gelato reached the docks last night. He stiffened. Go on. Ships are going missing, wrecked. Sailors claim there's a Kraken. The world hung between us, heavy and ridiculous, all at once. Hale snored. Kraken stories always pop up when fear needs a face. Exactly, I said. But the problem is the court's whispering that it's us. His jaw tightened. They'd love an excuse. And they got one, I said quietly. King Rowan declared war. For a moment, even the wind seemed to die. Around us, the Picachu Island bustled as usual. Laughter, trade, music, blissfully unaware that a storm far worse than any sea squall was forming. They think we are wrecking their ships, Hale said. If war comes, it won't, I cut in, turning to face him. My voice was steady, my resolve wasn't. Not if you let me go. He stared at me. Absolutely not. Captain! No, he said firmly. Gelato would hang you the moment you stepped foot on their docks. I softened my tone, tilted my head slightly, pressed my lips into the familiar pleading expression that had broken stronger wills than his. Please. He groaned, don't do the eyes. I winded them. Damn it. I stepped closer. Let me talk to the king. I swear on everything I am. We didn't cause this. And if there is something out there, I can find it. No casualties, no war. He searched my face, seeing not the girl who he'd found 2 years ago, but the woman who'd built wind-assigned rudders, pressure-triggered mines, and water desalination systems from scraps. Finally he exhaled. One meeting. I beamed. You won't regret it." "I already do," he muttered. The Gelato Kingdom was everything Picachu was not. Clean lines, polished stone, order enforced by tradition and steel. I felt the shift of the moment. My ship docked. Eyes followed me, suspicious and cold. King Rowan sat on his throne like a man carrying the weight of every bad decision his ancestors had ever made. His hair had gone grey too early, his hands clenched the armrest as if the world might fall apart if he let go. "You stand before me," he said, voice measured, "as a pirate emissary." I bowed deeply. "I stand as a guarantor." Murmurs rippled through the court. "I swear on my life," I continued, calm and firm. "The Picachu Island had no hand in these shipwrecks. And yet my sailors vanish," Rowan snapped, "never to return." "Because they don't know what they're facing," I said. "But I can find out." Silence followed. From the shadows beside the throne stepped Prince Dilan, tall, sharp-featured, eyes like polished ice. He looked at me the way one looks at a puzzle, not with curiosity, but calculation. "You ask us to trust a pirate," he said. I met his gaze without blinking. "I ask you to trust the truth." The king leaned forward. "You will join an expedition. If you lie, you die." "Fair enough," I nodded. Agreed. We set sail at dawn. 3 ships cut through mist waters. I'd insisted on the formation, 1 lightly staffed vessel ahead, 2 heavier ones behind. Dilan rowed in the 3rd ship, watching me from afar with suspicion carved into every line of his posture. The sea was calm, too calm. Then the water churned. A school of strange fish surged upward, bodies sleek and dark, mouths wide and flat, latching on to the hull in rippling waves. Wood cracked, sailors screamed. "Sharks!" someone shouted as fine cut through the water nearby. I didn't think, I reacted. I grabbed a rope, boots slamming against the mast as I climbed. The ship was already screaming, timbers groaning, hull shuddering under the relentless shaking below. I reached the spar and tore free the folded frame strapped onto my back. The glider snapped open with a sharp metallic whisper, ribs locking, canvas catching the wind like a great pale feather. "Jump!" I shouted. The deckhand hesitated only a heartbeat before I seized him by the collar and hauled him against me. His fingers clawed into my coat as the mast lurched. Then I leapt. For a breathless moment we fell. Then the wind caught. The glider held, not flying, not falling, but sliding, skimming the air as the ship bulked beneath us. The deckhand screamed once, then went silent, clinging to me as a broken vessel vanished into the white water and tearing fins. We drifted away like a torn gull feather, carried on salt wind and spray. The sea rushed below, slow and inevitable. We struck the water hard but whole, the good 3 cable lengths from the wreck, far enough that the fleeting swarm turned inward instead of chasing us. I went under, lungs burning, heart hammering, then surfaced, gasping, the deckhand still locked onto me like a lifeline. Only then did I let myself breathe. Moments later, we were hauled aboard the 2nd ship. As I coughed seawater and steadied myself, my eyes never left the churning remains of the 1st ship. "No Kraken," I murmured. Prince Dilan stood near the bow, hands clasped between his back, posture rigid. He hadn't spoken since the attack, but his eyes kept drifting toward me, sharp, assessing, like I was both a suspect and a solution. "What were those things?" he finally asked. I look up, blinking. Fish, definitely fish. That destroyed a reinforced hull in minutes. "Yes," I said lightly. "Fish with very rude table manners." That earned me a look so cold it could have flash frozen the sea. I grinned anyway. When we returned to Gelato, panic had already beaten us home. The docks swarmed with officials, guards, terrified merchants. News from the wreck spread faster than fire on oil. I barely had time to dry off before I was ushered straight back into the palace. King Rawan listened in silence as Dilan delivered his report. When it was my turn, I spoke clearly, carefully, every word chosen with intent. "There is no sea monster," I said. "No Kraken, no curse. What attacked the ship was a coordinated school of fish." The court erupted. "Ridiculous. Fish don't sink ships. Sailors have feared monsters for centuries." I raised my voice just enough to cut through the noise. "These fish don't just eat flesh, they eat wood." Silence fell like a dropped blade. I paced slowly across the marble floor. I watched them. They ignored the sailors at first. They went straight for the hull. They weren't hunting people. They were dismantling the ship. Prince Dilan frowned. "That implies intelligence." "Or instinct," I corrected. "And instinct can be far more dangerous." The king rubbed his temples. "Then find out what they are." "I intend to," I said. "I'll need access to your royal library." Dilan stiffened. "That wing is restricted." I tilted my head, smiling faintly. "So is the ocean. Yet your ship sailed." The king sighed. "Grant access." The royal library of Gelato was a cathedral of knowledge. Towering shelves, spiral staircases, a smell of dust and ink thick in the air. I felt more at home than I ever had in the throne room. I moved through ancient text with ease, fingers skimming spines, heart lighting up like I was greeting old friends. The scrolls, journals, half-forgotten marine mysteries, I devoured them all. Prince Dilan, far less enthusiastic, sat at a long table nearby, arms crossed, watching me work with quiet intensity. "You don't sleep?" he observed after several hours. "I nap aggressively," I replied without thinking. He studied me. "You risked your life out there. Why?" I paused, finally meeting his grace. "Because if war starts, people die for wrong reasons." That's idealistic. That's accurate. The night blurred together. I barely left the library. Dates emerged, patterns, northern currents. Mist-heavy nights, ships that had been in the water too long. Then I found it. A brittle yellowed page tucked inside a maritime log older than the kingdom itself. Grave-mouthed rippers. Sailor's name, hull eaters. My breath caught. I read faster. They weren't drawn to flesh. That was the first thing that bothered me. If those fish were predators, the water should have boiled with blood. Instead, they had ignored the sailors until the hull gave away. They hadn't hunted. They had worked. Wood alone didn't make sense either. Timber was everywhere. Ships had floated these waters for centuries without being eaten alive. So, I started asking a different question. Why this wood? I requested access to the damaged vessels that had made it back to the harbour. The king agreed, though I can tell he thought I was chasing ghosts. I scrapped samples from the surviving hulls. Slow, methodical work under the torchlight. The wood wasn't clean. It was coated in a slick, dark green film that smelled faintly metallic and sharp. Nothing like ordinary sea growth. Algae. But not the kind I'd seen ever before. I examined it under magnification, compared it against preserved hull scrapings from older ships. The difference was unmistakable. The strain thrived only in Gelato's northern currents, blooming thicker and longer as ship remained in the water. That was the answer. The fish weren't eating wood. They were eating this. The algae acted like a signal, a chemical marker strong enough to draw the school together. In vast numbers, they latched on using powerful suction, their constant struggle for position, creating enough stress and vibration to weaken the hull until it failed. At night, under mist cover, they could work undistributed, silent, and efficient. No monster, I whispered to myself, just nature following instructions. Survivors rarely escaped. Those who fell into water faced sharks drawn by vibration and blood. No monster, I whispered, just nature being efficient. I burst from the library and nearly collided with Dilan. I found them, I said, breathless. They called grave-mouth repairs. I explained everything, the algae, the patterns, the instinct. His skepticism faded, replaced by grim understanding. So the wrecks, he said slowly, were accidents. Yes, preventable, but how? He asked. Metal sheathing, I said instantly. Thin, lightweight hull covers, no algae. The fish won't touch them. He searched my face, looking for doubt. Finding none, he nodded once. Present this to my father. The court listened again, this time in stunned silence. King Rowan rose from his throne. If what you say is true, it is, I said firmly, and I'll help retrofit your ships. He looked at me for a long moment, then he bowed his head. You have my gratitude, he said, and my apology. War was called off that day. The Gelato Kingdom and Picachu Islands signed a peace accord before sunset. The weeks that followed were strange. I worked closely with Prince Dilan, overseeing ship modification, arguing over designs, trading barbed remarks that somehow turned into laughter when neither of us expected it. You treat danger like puzzle, he said once, and you treat it like a funeral, I replied. Balance, your highness. He almost smiled. Almost. Working side by side, the refit Gelato ships, Dilan and I grew close in a way neither of us expected. That began as a measured cooperation, turned into shared laughter, late-night arguments over designs, and a quiet understanding that settled between us naturally as the tide. Love crept in unnoticed, born from trust and purpose rather than ceremony. Not long after, peace was secured and Picachu Islands and Gelato stood united. We were married in a grand celebration by the sea. Pirates and nobles standing together as one. The years that followed were kind, filled with rebuilding, discovery, and happiness neither us had been raised to believe was possible.